Salutations! Thank you for lending an ear to The Voice of the Times for Thursday, February 11, 2021. For today's editorial, government effort to help consumers quickly descends into chaos. On Monday, a government-mandated price ceiling on pork and chicken went into effect, and before the sun even rose, a survey of markets around Metro Manila confirmed that our worst fears have been realized. Angered by the price cap, pork suppliers and vendors staged a pork holiday, refusing to sell the staple meat in an effort to force the government to back down and allow prices to return to the atrociously high level that instigated the government's intervention in the first place. To its credit, the government did not back down, and now seems to be taking positive signs to bring the situation under control. Although as of this writing, possible measures that will adequately support both pork suppliers and consumers are still being discussed. The pork holiday, however, should not have come as the surprise that it appeared to be. As we pointed out in an editorial last week, although the rather severe economic circumstances faced by the country at the present time recommend an intervention such as a price freeze, it is an action that is not without risks. If prices are high because there are supply constraints, which is the case with pork, putting a cap on prices tends to aggravate those supply problems. If suppliers feel they can withstand some period of time without making any income, they may simply refuse to sell until prices increase. The pork holiday was evidently an effort by pork suppliers to provide an object lesson of that. The contention of pork producers and vendors is that under the current conditions, with pork supply constrained by the ongoing African swine fever or ASF outbreak in the country and higher transportation costs due to the coronavirus pandemic, lowering the price erases their margin and with it, the personal income they need to sustain themselves. Their collective recommendation, if the government must intervene to reduce consumer prices, is for the government to subsidize pork prices, making up the difference between what the government calculates is an acceptable maximum price and what pork suppliers and vendors feel they need to charge. We are not at all unsympathetic to the economic plight of the pork producers and suppliers, but neither can we take their assertions at face value. 2 points are worth noting. First, the chicken sector, which has similarly been subjected to price control, has not responded to it in the same way as pork suppliers and vendors. Reports from markets on Monday were that the availability of chicken, while perhaps slightly less than usual, was nonetheless more than adequate. It is safe to assume that chicken producers and vendors are not exactly happy about the price control, but they have evidently been able to largely accommodate it. The second point that tends to undermine the pork sector's argument against the price cap is the fact that the landed cost of imported pork, even taking into consideration shipping and tariff costs before any government intervention on the latter, is less than the farm gate price of domestic pork. In effect, Filipino consumers are being asked to pay a premium for an inefficient domestic supply. It is not entirely the domestic pork producers and suppliers' fault, and it is not a problem with a quick or easy solution, but it is an unavoidable reality. Government, faced with a bit of a zero-sum choice of whether to target its support efforts toward the pork sector or the consumer market, must prioritize the latter and simply find ways to minimize harm to the former. Offering a subsidy, as pork producers have suggested, is one possible stopgap solution. Suspending market stall rental, a proposal offered by Quezon City Mayor Josefina Joy Belmonte, could provide at least some small relief, and would have the effect of spreading some of the overall cost to the government among local government units. What the government cannot do is to move slowly. The immediate problem of high prices and inadequate supply requires immediate action, whatever action is determined to be most appropriate. Likewise, the government cannot afford to move slowly to address the underlying problems of the ASF outbreak and supply chain obstacles. The sooner those problems can be effectively resolved, the sooner risky market interventions can be ended. And that's the editorial for Thursday, February 11, 2021. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print, subscribe to its digital edition, or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and listen to the Voice of the Times.